Hello everyone and welcome back to the Horror Hut. Before you drift off, I thought it would be a nice idea if you can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from. Right, let's get comfy and relax and let's begin. This happened a few years ago, when I was driving back from a wedding about 3 hours from where I lived. I didn't really know many people there, and I hadn't planned on staying the night, so I left around 11:30. I remember that because I looked at the time while trying to figure out if I could still grab something to eat on the way back. I was tired, but I wanted to sleep in my own bed, and the drive wasn't bad, mostly highway, nothing confusing. About halfway through, I hit traffic. Dead stop. I turned on the radio and sat there, thinking it was construction or something. After 10 minutes, I checked my phone and saw that there'd been a bad accident ahead. It looked serious, multiple cars involved, and the GPS said I'd be sitting there for at least an hour and a half. So I tapped the little reroute button, and it gave me an alternate way. It wasn't too different in terms of time, maybe 15 minutes longer, and I figured even if it added a little to the drive, at least I'd be moving. The new route took me off the main road at the next exit, then through some rural back roads for a while before it would loop me back to the highway. I didn't think much of it at the time. I'd driven through plenty of back roads before. I just wanted to get home. It started out fine. A little dark, not many streetlights, but nothing weird. I passed a few gas stations and a diner that was closed, and then it started to get more rural, trees on both sides, long stretches without intersections. I remember passing a couple houses, kind of spread out, but nothing stuck out at first. I noticed a truck maybe 10 minutes after I turned off the highway. It was a beat-up red pickup, older model. It pulled out from a small side road behind me, headlights a little dim but on. I remember seeing them in my rearview mirror and thinking the truck looked like it had been through a lot. The hood was dented and one of the headlights had the cloudy look like moisture got inside. At first I didn't think anything of it. People live up there, obviously. Someone probably just heading home late. I kept driving. The road got narrower, not one lane narrow, but enough that if another car was coming the opposite way, we'd both have to edge over a little. There weren't any streetlights now. Just my headlights cutting through trees on both sides. That's when I started noticing the houses. Or what was left of them. At first it was just one or two. I thought they were abandoned, dark windows, broken fences, overgrown yards. I passed one with a boarded-up door and a hole in the roof. Then another with a collapsed porch. All of them looked like they hadn't been lived in for years. I remember slowing down a little, not because I was scared, just kind of confused. I hadn't seen any lights in a while. No porch lights, no TVs flickering behind curtains, nothing. And every house I passed was worse than the last. I told myself maybe it was just a stretch of road where the homes had been left to fall apart. Maybe people had moved out, or there'd been a fire at some point. I don't know. I wasn't trying to come up with a theory or anything, I just didn't like the look of it. The truck was still behind me. I glanced in the mirror again and noticed it had pulled closer. Not tailgating exactly, but closer than it had been. I tapped my brakes slightly once, thinking maybe they'd back off a bit, but they didn't. Still, it was a narrow road. Maybe they just didn't want to risk getting too far behind. I told myself that and kept going. But the houses kept getting worse. There were no driveways now. Just crumbling structures set back from the road, half hidden behind trees and brush. One had a door that was hanging off the hinges, flapping slightly in the wind as I passed. Another had the roof completely caved in, with a rusted-out car in the yard. No signs of life. Not even animals. I checked my GPS again, but the signal had dropped. The little blue dot was still moving, but the map wasn't loading properly. I figured I'd hit a dead zone. It was fine, I told myself. I had downloaded the route already. I just had to follow the line. It looked like I had maybe 15 more minutes before I'd hit the highway again. That's when I realized I hadn't seen a single intersecting road in over 10 minutes. Just this one road, cutting through the woods, with nothing but ruins on either side. No signs, no mailboxes. No road markers at all. The truck was still there. Same distance. Still following. I remember squinting in the mirror, trying to see the driver. I couldn't. The headlights made it impossible. Just a vague silhouette. I thought about pulling over to let them pass, but there was nowhere to do it. No shoulder. Just ditches on both sides. And, to be honest, I didn't really want to stop. I told myself it was fine. Just an old road, maybe part of a town that had been left behind. The truck was probably just a local who knew the area better than I did. But the longer I drove, the harder it got to keep telling myself that. Because I started noticing something else. None of the houses had curtains. That seems like a weird detail, but once I noticed it, I couldn't stop seeing it. Every boarded up window had no glass behind it. Just empty halls. A few were still intact but had nothing covering them. No furniture inside. Just darkness. And then I passed a house where all the boards over the windows had been recently removed. Not broken, not old, splintered wood. Just gone. You could see the clean edges where the nails had been pulled out. I slowed down instinctively when I saw it. Inside, the house was completely empty. Not trashed like the others. No debris. Just bare floors and walls. Like someone had gutted it on purpose. It didn't fit with the others. It wasn't rotting or collapsed. It looked prepared. That's the word that came to mind, even though I didn't know what that meant. I drove a little faster after that. The truck stayed the same distance behind me. Then, maybe 2 minutes later, I passed another house that looked the same way, recently cleared out, windows wide open, no curtains, no furniture. And this time, I saw something. I didn't mean to. I was just glancing sideways as I passed. But in one of the open windows on the second floor, there was a person. Standing perfectly still. Not leaning out. Not hiding. Just standing in the dark, facing the road. I only saw them for a second, but I know they weren't moving. I don't know what they looked like. I couldn't see their face. Just the outline. Tall. Arms at their sides. I didn't slow down. I didn't stop. I just kept driving. That was the first time I felt it, that I might have really screwed up by taking this route. I checked my phone again. Still no signal. GPS frozen now. The blue dot wasn't even moving anymore. It just sat there, right in the middle of the road. I kept going. The trees got closer to the road. The houses became less frequent. Just more woods. I kept hoping for a crossroad, a gas station, anything. But there was nothing. And the truck kept following. Same distance. Never passed me. Never dropped back. Just there. I kept telling myself not to panic. It was just a truck. Maybe they lived further down this road. Maybe they were just heading home. It was late. People drive weird when they're tired. But then the road curved slightly, and when I came around the bend, the truck was closer. Not much, but definitely closer. I hadn't slowed down. If anything, I'd been speeding up. But now it was maybe 2 car lengths behind me. I tried not to react. I gripped the wheel a little tighter and kept going. I didn't want to do anything to make them think I was scared. I didn't want to give them a reason to mess with me. I just needed to get back to the highway. I kept checking the distance markers on the GPS map. Even though it wasn't updating, it still showed the route. I was getting closer. Maybe 5 more minutes. But that's when I realized something else. The road on the map, didn't match anymore. There was a turn coming up a fork in the road, but I didn't see it in real life. No signs. No turn. Just trees. It was like the road I was on didn't exist. Or like the GPS was showing me a different place altogether. I didn't know what to do. So I just kept driving. I kept driving, but at that point I wasn't even sure what I was driving toward. The map didn't line up with anything I was seeing. I should have hit a turn by then, but the road just kept going straight. The GPS dot was drifting off the blue route now, like I'd left the planned path entirely. No signal. No road signs. No mile markers. Just this narrow, winding road that didn't seem to lead anywhere. And the truck was still behind me. I tried to ignore it. I tried telling myself that maybe they weren't following me, they were just going the same way. But that only works for a little while. After 20 minutes on a road like that, no side streets, no turns, no visible reason for anyone to be driving out there, and they're still behind you, it's not just a coincidence. I noticed I'd started doing things without thinking. Keeping my hands at 10 and 2. Checking my mirrors too often. Sitting up straighter. Stuff I never do when I'm driving late at night, tired and half focused. And I kept waiting for the truck to do something, speed up, pass me, pull off anything to break the pattern. But it didn't. It just stayed behind me. Not close enough to be aggressive. Just steady. That was almost worse. I think what finally pushed it over the edge was the driveway. It was the first one I'd seen in a while. Gravel, cutting off to the right, with a little wooden post at the end. I couldn't read what was on the post, probably an address, long since faded, but there was a chain hanging loosely across the entrance. No gate. Just a chain, drooping in the middle like it had been unhooked and never put back. And in the driveway, maybe 20 feet in, there was a van. Old, tan, maybe late 90s. Parked crooked, front end turned toward the road, almost like it had been pulled in fast and then left that way. All the doors were closed, but one of the back windows was shattered. Glass was on the ground. No one was inside. And that's it, I passed it in maybe 3 seconds, but my brain just latched onto it. I had this dumb, involuntary thought, someone else came down this road. I don't know what happened to them. But they didn't keep going. I didn't see another car the whole time. No headlights. No parked vehicles. Just that van, sitting abandoned, with a broken window and no clear reason to be there. The truck didn't slow down when we passed it. That was when I decided I needed to try something. There was a bend coming up. Sharp curve to the left, trees close in on both sides. I couldn't see around it. I figured if the road was still empty beyond the bend, if there were no cross streets, no turns, I'd try to lose them. Not speed off or anything stupid. Just pull over and let them pass. If they didn't pass, then I'd know. So I took the bend, and as soon as I was around it, I hit the gas just a little, enough to put some distance between us. Then I saw a small patch of gravel off to the right, barely wide enough to stop, and I pulled over quick, killed my lights, and waited. A few seconds later, the truck came around the bend. And slowed down. Not a full stop. Not dramatic. Just eased off the gas. Like they were looking. Their headlights swept across me, lit up the inside of my car for half a second, and then kept going. I waited. Watched the red taillights disappear down the road. I should have felt better. But I didn't. Because now I had two choices, either sit there and wait, or keep driving in the same direction they just went. I waited maybe 2 minutes, engine still running. The woods around me were dead quiet. No bugs. No wind. Just the soft ticking of the engine cooling and the sound of my own heartbeat. Finally, I eased back onto the road and started driving again. Slower this time. Trying to think. Trying to figure out if there had been a turn I missed, some other way out. But I hadn't seen anything. No signs, no driveways since the van. Just trees and that fading gravel. I stayed on the road for another few minutes. Still no GPS. Still no signal. I tried loading the map again, hoping maybe I'd gotten closer to surface. It half loaded, the route popped up and then froze. But for a second, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. The road I was on didn't have a name. Just a gray line. No number. No street name. Nothing. The GPS still thought I was in the middle of nowhere. And then, up ahead, brake lights. The truck, parked diagonally across the road. Not moving. I hit the brakes gently, kept my distance. My headlights lit up the back of the truck, and I saw something I hadn't before. The tailgate was missing. Just gone. The bed was empty, but there were dark stains on the inside. Could have been oil. Could have been rust. Could have been something else. No movement. No one got out. I sat there for maybe 30 seconds, not moving either. Just watching. Waiting. And then the truck started rolling forward again. Slow. Like they'd just been waiting. It pulled ahead, turned slightly, and kept driving. I didn't follow right away. I waited until they were out of sight again. Then I started moving. And that's when I saw it. Right where the truck had been stopped, there was a set of fresh tire marks. Like they'd peeled out before, then backed up to park. And next to that, in the dirt along the side of the road, footprints. Just one set. Leading from the trees to the road. But not going back. They just stopped at the edge of the pavement. No path. No trail. Just came out of the woods. I kept driving. I don't know how long it was before I saw the house. It looked like the others at first, dark, rundown, windows boarded up. But as I got closer, I saw a light. Just one. A small lamp in an upstairs window. Warm yellow, flickering a little, like it was running off a generator. And for a moment, I felt relief. But then I noticed the other windows. All boarded up, but not randomly. Like someone had done it recently. The wood was clean. Cut to fit perfectly. Nailed in straight lines. Even the door was sealed shut from the outside. Except for that one room upstairs. With the light. And something moved in front of it. Just a shadow walking past the window. Slowly. Like they weren't in a hurry. Like they knew I'd seen it. There was no driveway to that house. No mailbox. Just a thin trail off the main road, barely wide enough for a car. I didn't stop. And the truck was still ahead of me somewhere. I started driving faster. Just enough to make up time. Hoping, praying I'd see a real road soon, or a sign, or anything to prove this wasn't some weird trap. I checked the GPS again. Frozen. And then I heard it. Not from outside. From my car. From the back seat. A soft thump. Like something shifting. I nearly swerved off the road. I yanked the wheel, pulled to the side, and turned around fast, but there was nothing. Just my backpack, a jacket, and a water bottle that had rolled off the seat. I stared for a full minute before turning around again. I didn't imagine that sound, but there was no one there. I locked the doors, even though I thought I already had, and kept going. And then the road started to change. The trees thinned out. The air smelled different. Not woodsy anymore, more like old asphalt. And up ahead, finally, I saw light. Pale blue. Street lights. I don't think I've ever been so happy to see a cheap gas station sign in my life. I pulled in fast, practically slammed the brakes. The truck was nowhere in sight. The station was closed, but the lot was lit. There was a vending machine out front, a bench, and a payphone. I checked my phone again, full bars. GPS snapped back online. I was still 30 minutes from home. But at least I knew where I was now. I sat there for a few minutes, just breathing, watching the road, half expecting the truck to come crawling in behind me. But it never did. Not that night, anyway. I didn't get out of the car right away. Even with the lights and the open space of the gas station, I didn't feel safe. I just sat there, engine running, watching the road I'd come from. It was completely empty. No headlights. No sound. Just that narrow stretch disappearing into the trees. The whole time I kept thinking the truck would show up again. That it had hung back, waiting for me to let my guard down. But nothing came. After a few minutes, I forced myself to step out and stretch, trying to act normal in case someone was watching, not that anyone else was around. The place was shut for the night. No cars in the lot. Just the dull hum of the vending machine and one flickering overhead light near the payphone. I stood there and tried to process what just happened. The more I thought about it, the more it didn't make sense. That whole road, the houses, the van, the footprints, the boarded up windows, it felt like some kind of setup. But for what? Who boards up a bunch of empty homes in the middle of nowhere? Who lives in a house with one room lit and the rest sealed from the outside? And that truck. It never passed me. I was sitting in that gas station for at least 10 minutes. If they kept driving, they would have come out eventually. It wasn't like there were other ways out of those woods. I'd been watching the GPS. That road didn't have offshoots. It just wound through the dead space and back to the main route. So where did they go? I didn't want to wait around to find out. I got back in the car, locked the doors, and drove the rest of the way home without stopping. I think I looked in my rearview mirror every 30 seconds for that whole half hour. Every time I saw a pair of headlights, my stomach knotted up, but it was always just a regular car or a truck that eventually turned off. Nothing red. Nothing beat up. Nothing following. I pulled into my apartment complex around 2:30 a.m., parked under the street lamp, and sat in the car for a long time before going inside. I remember just staring at the door to my building, keys in my hand, trying to convince myself it was really over. Once I got upstairs, I locked the door behind me, all the locks. Even the chain, which I never usually use. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up with the lights on, watching the parking lot through the blinds. Just waiting. Nothing ever showed up. I went back out in the morning just to check my car in the daylight. Everything looked fine. No scratches, no damage. But when I opened the back seat to grab my backpack, something was off. The jacket I'd left back there, it wasn't where I remembered it. It had been folded over one side of the seat. Now it was balled up on the floor. It could have shifted when I braked hard, I guess. But the water bottle was still upright in the cup holder on the door. Everything else looked untouched. Still, that was enough. I pulled the whole car apart, glove box, under the seats, trunk. I checked every inch of it, just to be sure there wasn't anything left behind. Nothing. No sign anyone had been in there but me. I didn't tell anyone about it for a while. Not because I was scared of how it sounded, though I knew it did sound insane, but because I didn't want to say it out loud. It felt like if I talked about it, it would somehow continue. Like I hadn't really gotten away yet. But a couple weeks later, I looked up the route on my laptop, retraced it step by step. I wanted to see if that road even existed. It didn't show up on Google Maps. Not under any name. There was a segment that might have matched the shape of the road I took, but no street view. No data. Just a gray line between two larger highways. I zoomed in, looked for houses. Satellite view showed some clearings, maybe the shells of buildings, but nothing with detail. No labels. No addresses. Nothing recent. Just empty woods and some long-forgotten foundations. I don't drive at night much anymore. And I don't reroute unless I absolutely have to. Every now and then I still check the map. That stretch of road is still there, unlabeled. No images. No reviews. Just a line that cuts through a place nobody seems to live. The GPS thinks it's a shortcut. I know better. This happened in 2021, when I was driving from Washington to Arizona to visit a friend. I'd done the trip a couple of times before and figured I'd take a few days and make it more of a road trip instead of rushing through it. I had a few saved spots on Google Maps, little viewpoints and back roads people had posted online. I like driving alone and stopping where I want, so that was kind of the appeal for me. I'd left Oregon that morning and planned to stop somewhere near Redding for the night. Around 5 p.m., I was maybe 2 hours out and getting a little bored of the main highway. I pulled over at a gas station, stretched my legs, and started scrolling through maps again for anything that might be more scenic than I-5. One of the pins I had saved was labeled something like Old Overlook Crazy View. No other description. It was a little out of the way, and the road leading to it didn't have a name, just a gray dotted line branching off the main route. Looked like maybe a maintenance or service road. It didn't seem too far out of the way though, maybe an hour round trip. I figured if it looked sketchy, I'd just turn around. The entrance was easy to miss. No signs, no gate, just a break in the trees and a dirt path angling down off the shoulder. There were some faded tire marks, so clearly other cars had used it, but I didn't see any recent ones. The road dipped right into the woods, and I lost sight of the highway within about 30 seconds. I wasn't nervous or anything at that point. It was still daylight, just starting to turn golden. I had half a tank of gas, a working phone, and a power bank. No signal, but I downloaded offline maps. I'd done worse roads before. The first mile was fine. Narrow but drivable. Trees on both sides, lots of pine needles and soft dirt. I was going slow anyway, maybe 15 miles per hour. I didn't see any turnoffs or trails, just one road winding deeper. Nothing unusual. But maybe 5 or 6 minutes in, I started seeing things that didn't really match what I expected. Like bits of trash along the sides of the road. Not like campers, I mean old stuff. Torn plastic sheeting, rusted cans, even a ripped out car seat lying on its side in the grass. Nothing fresh. Like people had dumped random junk there years ago and just left it. Then I saw a stack of tires off to the right. 6 or 7 of them, piled neatly. All different types and sizes. That was when I started paying a little more attention. The road kept getting rougher, lots of dips and tree roots. I slowed even more and thought about turning around, but it's one of those roads that's barely wide enough to do a clean three-point turn, and the sides slope down into the trees. I told myself I'd go a little further and try to find a better spot to turn around. That's when I noticed how quiet it was. Like, not just peaceful quiet. Dead quiet. I hadn't seen any wildlife since I left the main road. No birds. No squirrels. No bugs tapping against the windshield. I turned off the music and rolled the window down a little. Nothing. Just the crunch of tires over dirt and the occasional twig snapping under the wheels. Then I saw the shoe. It was lying on the left shoulder of the road. Just one. Tan hiking boot, laces still tied. Looked like it had been sitting there a while. The leather was cracked and dry, and there was moss growing on the side of it. That's when I started to get uneasy. I drove a few more yards and finally found a wider patch where the road curved around a big stump. I stopped the car and put it in reverse, trying to angle myself to turn around without getting stuck in the soft edge. And that's when I felt the pop. It wasn't loud. More like a thump and a sudden sag under the front left side. The car tilted slightly and I froze with my hands still on the wheel. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the dashboard light came on, low pressure warning, and I knew I'd blown a tire. I hadn't even hit anything that I noticed. I got out slowly, still kind of hoping it was a false alarm, but as soon as I rounded the front of the car, I saw it, front left tire completely flat. Not just a leak. A deep puncture, almost like a slice across the tread. I crouched to look closer, and that's when I saw the spike. It was small, rusted, and jammed into the tire from below. I reached under and tugged it out. It looked like a cut-down nail welded to a little square of scrap metal. Homemade, almost. I looked around and saw more of them scattered just off the center of the road, 2, 3, maybe more, partially buried under leaves and dirt. Not in a random pile. Spread in a pattern. It hit me, then, that it hadn't been an accident. I stood up fast and looked around. I didn't see anyone. The trees were thick, shadowy. No sound. Not even wind. I got back in the car quickly and locked the doors without even thinking. My heart was starting to pound. I grabbed my phone, still no service. The road behind me was too narrow to reverse for long. I would have had to back up half a mile to get back to the highway. And I couldn't drive forward either. The road curved out of sight, but if it was spiked in one spot, there might be more. I didn't want to pop another tire. I sat there for a minute, trying to think. That's when I saw the flashlight. It flicked on out of nowhere, maybe 15 feet off the road to my left, deep between the trees. Just a quick beam across the brush, not pointed at me, but it moved like someone sweeping the ground. I only saw it for a couple seconds before it clicked off again. Then, another one on the right side. Further ahead. This one was brighter. It stayed on longer, lighting up the base of a tree. I could see the shape of someone holding it, moving slowly. Then it went dark too. No voices. No sound. Just the flashlights. And then, from both sides, 2 men stepped out of the trees. Not running. Just walking, maybe 10 or 12 feet apart, one on each side of the road. They both had long crowbars in one hand and flashlights in the other. Neither of them looked at me right away. They were walking like they were heading to meet in the middle of the road, casual, like they were out for a stroll. I didn't move. I just sat there, watching them get closer, until one of them finally looked up and met my eyes through the windshield. He didn't say anything. Just stopped walking. Turned his flashlight toward me, not in my eyes, just on the hood of the car, and stood there. The other guy slowed, still looking down at the road. That was where the dread really started to creep in. because nothing about what they were doing made sense. They didn't look surprised to see me. They didn't wave, didn't ask if I needed help, didn't even look annoyed that I was blocking their path. They just stood there, like they were waiting for something, like they'd been expecting me. I didn't move. I just kept my hands on the wheel and watched them through the windshield. One guy was on the driver's side, maybe 10 feet away. The other had stopped just ahead of the car, off to the right. Neither said anything. The one closest to me was older, probably mid-50s. Gray beard, dirty baseball cap, heavy boots. His crowbar was slung over his shoulder like it was just another tool. The other one was younger, taller, skinnier. He had this slouch to him, like his shoulders were always slightly hunched. They both wore dark jackets. I couldn't make out their faces clearly, but their posture, the way they were just standing there, waiting, that got under my skin. I tried to act like I wasn't scared. I gave a little wave through the window. Not a friendly wave, just a sort of what's going on gesture. The older guy didn't react. The younger one took a couple slow steps closer but stayed on his side of the road. I rolled the window down just enough to speak through it. "You guys live out here?" I said, trying to sound casual. "I think I hit something back there." "Got a flat?" "Nothing." The older guy took one step forward. "Just one." Then stopped again. "You're on private land," he said, voice flat. Not angry. Just factual. "Oh, sorry. I didn't see any signs. I was just trying to find that lookout point." "You shouldn't be here," he said, cutting me off. Same flat tone. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. The sun had dropped lower, and everything was dimming fast. It was that weird twilight where the trees go almost black, but the sky is still light. "I can turn around," I said. I didn't mean to trespass. "Just let me back out and I'll be gone." Neither of them answered. The older guy looked down the road, past my car, then back at me. "You can't go that way." I didn't know what to say. He wasn't yelling. He didn't sound threatening, but he also didn't sound like he wanted me to leave. Or stay. It was like I wasn't really part of whatever was going on in his head. The younger guy shifted his crowbar from one hand to the other. He looked at the flat tire, then up at me again. Still no expression. That's when I made the mistake of opening my door. I thought maybe if I stepped out, I could diffuse it somehow. Like if I wasn't just a person behind glass, it'd be easier to talk. I don't know, it was a stupid instinct. As soon as the door opened and I put one foot out, both of them started moving. Not fast, but at the same time. In sync. No talking. Just walking toward the car, closing the gap. I shut the door immediately and hit the lock. Backed the car up a few feet even though I knew the rim was getting chewed up. They stopped again, maybe 6 feet from the front bumper. At that point I was done pretending. I threw the car in drive and swerved around them onto the far shoulder, trying to avoid the middle of the road. I figured if I could make it a little further, I'd find a place to turn around or at least get out of sight. As I passed them, I caught a glimpse of the older guy's face through the windshield. Still no emotion. Just watching. I drove maybe 100 yards and stopped. I didn't want to keep going down a road that might be fully blocked. I just needed to get out and look. I left the engine running, grabbed the tire iron from under the seat, and stepped out slowly. I kept the door open behind me and walked about 10 feet ahead. The road curved again, and just past the bend, I saw it. Another spike strip. This one wasn't even hidden. It was laid right across the dirt like someone didn't expect me to come this far. A piece of chain held it in place at one end, like it could be dragged off the road when needed. That told me two things. One, this wasn't random. Two, I wasn't the first person who'd come down here. I backed up toward the car without taking my eyes off the curve. I didn't hear footsteps, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. I kept the tire iron tight in my hand, even after I got back inside. I put the car in reverse and started backing slowly the way I'd come. No other choice at that point. I figured maybe I could get enough distance to turn around without driving over more spikes. But when I came around the bend, they were gone. The two men. Just not there. No sign of them on the road, no movement in the trees. I stopped the car again and scanned both sides, but I didn't see anything. I didn't like that at all. I kept reversing, fast as I could without losing control. A few minutes later, I saw the place where the road had widened earlier. Enough to swing a turn. I pulled into it, cutting the wheel hard, and managed to turn around in 3 jerky moves. My heart was racing the whole time. I kept checking the mirrors, expecting them to come running out of the woods. But nothing happened. I was almost back to the highway when I saw something that made my stomach drop. A camera. It was nailed to a tree about 10 feet up. Camouflaged, but I caught the glint of the lens. A game cam, maybe. Or a security camera. I wouldn't have noticed it in daylight, but it had a little red light blinking. It was active. I didn't stop to get a better look. I drove straight back to the highway, tires thudding, rim grinding. I didn't care. Once I hit the pavement again, I didn't slow down for 20 minutes. Eventually I pulled into a truck stop and parked in the back lot behind a row of semis. I stayed in the car with the doors locked and just sat there trying to calm down. I kept checking around me like they'd somehow followed me back. After a while, I got out and checked the back of the car. The tire was trashed, ripped wide open. I looked under the car and didn't see any more spikes or damage, but I didn't feel good about staying out there alone, even in a lot full of trucks. I texted a friend who lived about an hour south and told him I was coming early. When I finally got back on the road, I kept thinking about those two guys. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't offer help. They didn't threaten me either, not directly. That's what made it worse. They weren't trying to scare me. They acted like I'd stumbled into something that had already been decided. Like I wasn't supposed to be part of it. Like I'd interrupted something they weren't done setting up. And whatever it was, it had a pattern. Because you don't build a spike trap and a backup spike trap and set up a game camera unless you're waiting for someone. And now, I was wondering if that someone had ever made it back to the highway. Or if they'd done what I almost did, stepped out. Asked the wrong question. Waited too long to turn around. I didn't sleep much that night. I ended up crashing in my friend Jeremy's place. He lived in a small town south of Reading and had a spare couch in his garage he used as a workshop. He didn't ask a lot of questions when I showed up late, just noticed my tire was destroyed and offered me a beer. I didn't tell him everything right away. Just said I'd taken a wrong turn off the highway and run over something. He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. We stayed up talking about old road trips and dumb stuff we used to do in college, and that helped a little. Made it feel distant. Almost like I'd imagined it. But I kept checking the driveway every 20 minutes until I finally passed out sometime after 3. The next morning, I went into town and had the tire replaced. I thought about having the shop check the undercarriage for trackers or anything weird, but I didn't know how to ask without sounding paranoid. I just paid in cash and left as soon as they were done. I sat in the parking lot afterward with the engine running and stared at the map on my phone. I couldn't stop thinking about that road, about how clean it all was. No junk cars, no tents, nothing obvious. Just little details of the camera, the tire pile, the spike placements all hidden in plain sight. And the way those two guys had moved. Like they'd done this before. I zoomed in on the satellite view, trying to trace the path I'd taken. The road wasn't marked. It just showed up as a faint line veering off the highway, then vanishing into forest. But when I tracked the map further west, I noticed something. There were other lines like it. Same thickness, same faded look. Unmarked, looping through empty stretches of forest. Some dead-ended, others branched. A few had strange square clearings near the ends, not labeled, not farmed. Just empty space. Flat, pale. I tapped one that was about 5 miles south of where I'd gone in. Dropped a pin and switched to satellite. It showed a wide clearing with what looked like 2 long trailers and a few rust-colored patches in the dirt. No buildings. No driveways. Just a worn track leading in and out. I wanted to let it go. I really did. But it felt unfinished. Like I'd escaped something, yeah, but I hadn't understood it. And maybe if I didn't understand it, I wouldn't know what to avoid next time. So I went back. Not all the way, I wasn't suicidal. But I drove north on the highway and passed the area again, slowly this time. I didn't stop, didn't pull off. I just tried to catch the turnoff in daylight to see if I'd missed something obvious. A sign. A fence. Anything. There was nothing. Just a break in the trees and the faint impression of tire tracks leading into the woods. I kept driving. Half an hour later, I pulled into a gas station and went inside. I bought a coffee and started talking to the guy behind the counter, early 60s. Looked like he'd lived in that area forever. I asked if he knew about any old service roads or trailheads north of town. Casual, like I was looking for a spot to camp or hike. He gave me a weird look. Which part you mean? Just off 299. Maybe 10 miles out. There's an old dirt road, no sign, looked like it used to lead somewhere. He leaned on the counter. A lot of those around here. Most of them go nowhere. Old logging roads. Right. This one had a pile of tires near the entrance. Someone might have dumped him. He was quiet for a second, then said, "You didn't go down it, did you?" Just a bit. Got a flat and turned around. Still quiet. Then he said, "That ain't a place you want to be poking around. Nothing out there but meth heads and squatters. Cops don't even go back that far unless they got a reason." I didn't push. Just nodded and said thanks. But something in the way he said it, not scared, exactly. Just resigned. Like people had gone back there before. And hadn't come back quick. I got back on the road and kept going. I thought that was the end of it. Until 3 days later, when I was already in Arizona, I got a call from an unknown number. I don't usually answer those, but for some reason, I did. There was no one on the other end at first. Just wind noise. Then the line clicked, not a hang-up, just a little electronic pop, and I heard someone breathing. It wasn't heavy. Just shallow and steady. No voice. No background noise. Just breathing. I hung up immediately. 10 seconds later, I blocked the number. I know that could have been anyone. A spam call. A glitch. Some kid messing around. But it didn't feel random. I turned off my phone and left it off for the rest of the night. Slept with a chair propped under the door handle of the motel room. I didn't hear from them again. No more weird calls. No one showed up. No signs I was being followed. Still, for weeks after, every time I got on the highway, I found myself checking the shoulder for dirt paths, looking for cameras, watching the mirrors longer than necessary. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd gotten out of the car when they first stepped onto the road. If I'd tried to talk to them. If I'd waited even one more minute before reversing. But I didn't. And I won't ever go back. Not to that road. Not to that state. I still have the spike. It was jammed so deep into the tire that the shop missed it when they threw the old one out. I found it in the trunk later, caught under the mat. It's sitting in my desk drawer now, rusted, homemade, shaped almost perfectly for puncturing. I think about throwing it away, but some part of me wants to keep it. Not as a souvenir, as a reminder. This happened about 2 years ago. I was living in San Diego at the time, working freelance gigs, so I drove a lot for meetings or deliveries, whatever people needed. I wasn't new to navigating the city, but I didn't really know all the areas, especially farther out from the coast. That day, I was coming back from a job in Chula Vista. It was just past 5 p.m. and traffic was already stacking up. I had been on the 805 for maybe 10 minutes when it slowed to a crawl. I checked Waze, and it was red for miles. Apparently there was a stalled semi on an off-ramp somewhere. It suggested an alternate route through side streets to avoid the jam. I didn't think twice. I took the next exit. The area looked fine at first. Just standard strip malls, gas stations, palm trees. I followed the directions through a few turns and ended up on a narrow 2-lane road lined with older houses. One of those streets where every yard has a different kind of fence, chain link here, cinder block there, sometimes just tall grass. The app said to go straight for another mile before looping back to the freeway on-ramp. But right around that time, it glitched out and froze. The little blue dot just stopped. I waited a second, hoping it'd catch up. Then it suddenly reloaded and gave me a totally different set of instructions. It told me to turn right onto this small street with a dead-end symbol next to it. I figured maybe there was a back alley or a shortcut. Waze does weird things sometimes. So I turned. This street was different right away. The pavement was more cracked, and the houses were packed tighter together. Lots of overgrown bushes, and most of the windows I passed had security bars. A few front lawns had those tiny white plastic chairs, the kind that look like they've never moved in years. There were no people around, no cars parked on the street, not even on driveways. It felt weird, but not in a dramatic way. Just too quiet. I drove slowly. It was getting darker, and the houses weren't close enough together to block the low sun, so everything looked washed out in this orangey light. The road curved slightly, and I couldn't see the end until I was nearly there. It was a cul-de-sac. No alley. No exit. Just a loop of broken sidewalk and a few more boarded-up homes. My GPS must have bugged again, because this wasn't going to reconnect with the freeway. I sighed and pulled into the loop, figuring I'd just turn around and go back the way I came. That's when I saw them. 3 guys in hoodies, standing at the mouth of the cul-de-sac where I had just driven in, completely blocking the road. I didn't see them when I passed. They weren't there. But now they were. Just standing shoulder to shoulder across the width of the street. Not talking. Not moving. I slowed my car to a stop halfway through the turn. I didn't want to panic, but the whole thing felt off. I figured maybe they were just cutting through or waiting for someone. but it was weird how they were just there all of a sudden, like they'd been waiting behind something. I looked for another way out, but there wasn't one. The street ended in a wall and a few trash bins tipped over near a busted fence. One of the houses on the corner had boards over every window and a missing front door. Another looked burned out, half the siding charred. The three guys still hadn't moved. One of them had his hands in his sweatshirt pocket, and another had his hood pulled so far over his head that I couldn't even see his face. They were about 30 feet away from me, just standing across the exit like a barrier. I didn't want to overreact, but I also didn't want to roll toward them without knowing what their deal was. So I stayed still, just idling. I figured maybe if I waited a minute, they'd walk off, or cross the street, or do something. But they didn't. I glanced at my phone again to reload the map. No signal. Not low. Just gone. No service, no bars, nothing. The blue dot was still frozen on the cul-de-sac like it had been earlier. I refreshed it a few times. Nothing changed. So now I was stuck in a dead-end street, in a neighborhood I didn't know, with three strangers standing in the only way out. And I couldn't call anyone or look anything up. I started getting that tense feeling in my chest, not full-on panic, just that weird awareness when something's not quite right and you can't explain why yet. The guy in the middle shifted a little and leaned down, like he was adjusting his shoe, but he kept one hand in his pocket the whole time. The one on the left started glancing around, not at me, but down the sidewalk, like he was checking for something. The third just stood perfectly still. His hood was still low, and I couldn't tell where he was looking. At one point, I tapped my horn just once, lightly. Not aggressive. I figured maybe they hadn't noticed I needed to pass. No reaction. They didn't even flinch. Now I was watching the rearview mirror constantly. Still no cars behind me, no one on porches, no sound at all, not even a dog barking. Just the low idle of my engine and some wind scraping against a loose piece of siding nearby. I backed up a little, like I was going to reverse out. They didn't move. That's when the guy on the left, the one who kept looking around, took a couple steps forward into the street. Still not looking at me. Just stepped forward, like he was trying to change his angle. The other two stayed where they were. I didn't know what they wanted. It didn't feel like a robbery. They weren't approaching. They weren't saying anything. They weren't even looking at me directly. But they were still blocking the exit. And they weren't leaving. I sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring at them through the windshield, trying to figure out what to do next. My stomach had that hollow, slow sinking feeling. I remember hearing a flag on a pole nearby flapping in the wind, and the way it sounded almost too loud, like everything else around had just stopped. I was still staring at them when the guy on the left put something small and shiny down on the ground in front of him. It looked like a quarter at first. But when he moved his foot back, I realized it was a key. That's when I realized I was probably in trouble. I stayed in the car, engine still running, just watching the guy stand there with his foot next to the key. He wasn't doing anything else. Wasn't pointing to it, wasn't reaching for it again. He just stood like that, kind of angled, like he was half turned toward the others, but not talking to them. They still weren't looking at me. None of them were. It felt like I was being treated like, I don't know, bait? Like I was part of something, but not the focus of it. I remember thinking that over and over. That they weren't watching me. But they were still waiting on something I was supposed to do. The middle guy finally took a slow step forward, just one step, and then stopped again. Same as the first guy, nothing aggressive, nothing sudden, just a slow, careful movement like they didn't want to spook something. Me, I guess. That's when I noticed the house closest to me on the right had its gate cracked open. just barely. Like an inch or two. I hadn't seen it move, but it had definitely been shut when I pulled into the cul-de-sac. I looked at it for a few seconds and realized the curtain in the window next to the gate was pushed slightly to the side, like someone was holding it open just enough to peek out. The window behind it was dark, so I couldn't see anyone. But it didn't look like a curtain that had fallen. It looked like someone was watching. I looked back toward the guys in the road. The one on the left had stepped back now, almost behind the other two, like he was giving space. The one in the middle was still just standing there. The one on the right hadn't moved at all, and he still had his hood low. I didn't know what they wanted from me. If it was about money, they would have just come up to the car. If it was a robbery, they wouldn't have been so still. If they wanted to scare me, they would have done something by now. But they weren't doing anything except holding that position, keeping the only exit blocked. I thought about just flooring it, going right through them. I could have done it. There was space. But I kept hesitating. Something about how still they were made it hard to act, like if I did something sudden, I'd kick off something worse. It's hard to explain. I wasn't frozen. I just didn't want to guess wrong. I shifted the car into reverse and turned slightly, inching it backward the way I came. There were no driveways on this part of the street, just a narrow sidewalk and fences, so I couldn't really turn around fully without getting closer to the guys. As I backed up, I heard a sound behind me, not loud, just metal on pavement. I looked in my rear view again. Another person, walking slowly toward my car from the far end of the cul-de-sac. It was a woman. At least, I think it was. She was wearing a huge gray coat with the hood up, dragging a metal cart behind her. Like one of those wireframe ones people use for laundry or groceries. It was empty except for a few bags hanging from the sides. She wasn't looking at me either. Just walking toward me in a straight line, like I wasn't even there. I froze again. Now I was halfway between the woman and the three guys. And even though neither side was rushing me, I felt like I'd just been boxed in. She passed the same open gate I had noticed earlier, and right when she was next to it, she stopped, turned her head slightly, and went into the yard. Just like that. Pulled the gate open the rest of the way and walked in. She didn't knock, didn't call out, just disappeared behind the fence. I didn't see whoever was behind the curtain move. But when I looked back at the window, the curtain was hanging normal again. At that point, I finally let myself really think about leaving. Like not just backing up or honking, but just pushing through whatever this was. I still didn't know what they wanted, but I knew I didn't want to be in that cul-de-sac anymore. I shifted into drive again and pulled forward a bit, toward the three guys. Not fast, just enough to see how they'd react. The guy in the middle tilted his head slightly. Not back, not to the side, just a tiny angle. Then he stepped back once. Not out of the way, just back. And he turned his face enough that I saw he had a beard. That shouldn't have mattered, but it did. It made it worse. Because now he wasn't this fake shape. He was a real person. He had a face, and he was choosing to act like this anyway. The guy on the right, the one who hadn't moved, finally raised his head just enough that I saw his mouth. He was smiling. Not a wide smile. Not a threatening one. Just this small, almost bored smile, like he knew something I didn't. Like this had already played out. I stopped the car again. There was a long pause. No one moved. I was just sitting there in this weird standoff with three strangers who wouldn't talk to me or step aside. Then something small landed on my windshield. It was a piece of gravel. I looked up. Someone was standing on the roof of the house across from me. Dead center, crouched behind a broken chimney. I don't know how long they'd been there, but they were watching. I didn't even get a clear look, just enough to see the shape of someone hunched low, holding something. Maybe binoculars. Maybe a phone. I don't know. But they were up there, watching all of us. I put the car back in reverse again. I didn't know what I was doing. I just couldn't stay where I was. The woman in the coat hadn't come back out. The gate was still open. The guys hadn't moved again. But that person on the roof, that's what changed it for me. Because now I knew for sure I was being watched. Not randomly. Not coincidentally. Watched on purpose. And nobody was trying to help. I rolled backwards slowly, keeping my hands on the wheel, still watching the street ahead. I was halfway back down the curve when I saw a small side path, just a dirt lane between 2 yards, almost hidden behind an overgrown hedge. I hadn't noticed it on the way in. It looked like it might connect to another road or alley. I knew it was a risk. It could have been another dead end, or a yard, or worse. But staying felt worse. So I turned into it. My tires kicked up dust and the undercarriage scraped once on something, but I kept going. Behind me, I saw the 3 guys slowly turning around. Not running. Just turning. Like they didn't care if I went that way. Like it wasn't over. I didn't see the person on the roof again. The path curved left, then sloped down behind a row of sheds. I couldn't see where it ended yet, but I kept driving. I remember gripping the wheel tighter than I ever have in my life. The dirt path narrowed as I went. Branches scraped the sides of my car and the ground dipped more than I expected. I kept thinking I was going to get stuck, but I couldn't stop. Not after what I just left behind. I made it maybe 30, 40 yards in before I realized the path wasn't really meant for cars. It curved too tight and dipped in weird places. There was no gravel, no tire tracks, just packed down weeds and some trash here and there. I had to keep swerving around piles of cinder blocks and what looked like burned out appliances, a busted fridge, an old TV with the screen smashed in. I kept checking the mirror. No one was behind me, but I felt like I was being funneled. Like this weird path wasn't an escape, it was a trap that worked the other direction. But it was all I had. At one point the path split into 2. The right fork looked slightly more open, so I took it. About 20 feet in, I realized it just looped behind a boarded up shed and ended in a chain link fence. I threw the car in reverse and bumped back over the same tree root I just passed. Every noise the car made felt 10 times louder. I don't know how long it took, but eventually the trees opened up and I saw pavement again, a cracked, faded lot behind what looked like a closed-down laundromat. There was a dented dumpster tipped halfway over, and a bunch of shopping carts leaned against the wall like someone had tried to build a shelter out of them. But it was open. No gates. No people. I pulled in fast, scanned both ends of the building. Nothing. Still no one behind me. I kept driving, followed the narrow drive that wrapped around the building and popped out onto a bigger street. I didn't recognize it, but there were traffic lights ahead and a few street lamps. No houses. Just some closed shops and gas stations. But I'd never been so relieved to see neon in my life. I drove straight for several minutes without turning. No music. No talking. Just me with the windows up, breathing shallow. I passed 2 cars going the other way, and even that felt like some huge relief. Normal people. Normal life. At the first open gas station I saw, I pulled in. I sat there with my hands on the wheel for a minute before I could move. Then I finally got out. The air was cold, but I welcomed it. Inside, the cashier barely looked at me. I bought a bottle of water and stood near the back window just sipping it, not really even tasting it, just being there where it was bright and loud and safe. Eventually, I asked the guy behind the counter what neighborhood this was. He named some street I'd never heard of. When I told him where I'd come from, the name of the cross street I remembered before the cul-de-sac, he looked up a little. He said something like, "You were down there?" and shook his head. That was it. Just a head shake and a half laugh like, "Jesus, man." I didn't push it. I didn't want to know. I stayed there for a while. Charged my phone, looked up directions back to the main highway, and followed every main road to get there. I didn't use GPS again until I was back on the interstate. Even then, I kept checking every car around me for the next hour. Every exit sign. Every time someone braked suddenly, I jumped. I didn't call the police. I didn't know what to tell them. A bunch of people stood weird and didn't talk to me. No weapons, no threats, no names. Just a quiet street and people who watched. I don't know what I stumbled into. I don't care. I've never gone back through that area again. Not even close. I check maps now, really check them, and I don't take shortcuts unless I know exactly where they lead. If I miss a turn, I just wait. I don't see where this road goes. Some places aren't just off the beaten path. They're off for a reason.